Good morning. Today is a great day to paint, and so we are going to be doing a quick and dirty little great wave. So I have primed this canvas with a simple green, blue, white mixture to get this lovely teal color. It's close enough to the sky. It's not perfect. And now I have got the same mixture, green, blue, and white, but in a slightly darker combination. And so this is what I'm going to use to outline here. I'm going to make our great wave here-ish. And so we're going to have this little pinnacle area, and then we're going to have a slope here. And now we're going to have another wave over here. We're going to make a sort of horizon wave. It's interesting. The original great wave does not have a really solid horizon line. And in fact, it has Mount Fuji in the background. We're skipping Mount Fuji, and we're going to give it a little bit of a horizon, just a slight one. And now here we're going to add another wave, kind of a foreground wave. We're actually going to move this into another wave. And let's bring that down. All right, there. So we have wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and our background. Now I'm going to start by filling in the background with this same dark blue color. Just a little bit. Here we are. Now I might leave that alone and I might not. I don't really know. I really like streaky paint, so I'm going to leave a couple streaks in here, but you can smooth this out a little bit more if you'd like. Now the sky. The sky can be left exactly like this. I really like a big stylized sun, like a big yellow circle with radiating beams of light, but I'm just going to leave it like this for right now, because we are going to be focusing on the waves. Now, in the Great Wave, the waves are striped, which is really most of its charm, in my opinion. And so we are going to have striped waves. We're going to mostly focus on this big guy. And so for that, I'm going to go back to my dark blue. And we need to remember how this wave is formed. So this is all foam all the way down to there. That's all foam. So we're going to leave that alone. What we are going to do is we're going to stripe here like this. So we're going to keep doing this down this wave, but it's going to move directions over here. So it's more like that sort of stripe. So we need to make these two patterns meet here in the middle. Now, the striping does not need to be precise. I've painted this motif several times in several different fashions, some with clinical precision and others more like this, and both ways work great. If you want to make a more precise great wave, I highly recommend just printing out the picture, rubbing pencil all over the back, and then stinging it onto your canvas, and then going over the lines on top with a pen or a pencil so that it carbon papers onto your canvas. But if you're just looking for a fun little activity, it's a super easy painting to make a little fake copy of. We're going to do the same with all the other waves. If you want, you could do this great wave in slightly different shades of blue to make it pop more, but I wouldn't say that it's necessary. I'm going to come down here and do little swirls like this. Now remember, this top is going to end up being white because that's the crest of the wave. It's a little bit foamy, but below it's going to be striped. It's okay if these waves kind of sort of run into each other because they're waves. That's what they do. Here we are. If you wanted to be ultra precise, you could also differentiate each individual wave with slightly different colors of blue to reflect where the sun would be hitting it. One thing I am going to do is, I don't know if you can see this, but my streak of wave here has run into my great wave. I don't want that. It kind of ruins which is where. This wave is behind the great wave in my layers of where things are in perspective. And so I want this to look farther back than the great wave so it can't overlap at all. So I'm going to smooth that out. And then we got these stripes. Another way to force perspective, I've made all my stripes loosely the same size, but you could make them larger in front and smaller in the back. That would force some perspective. Now, what I'm going to do is take now a new color here. So what I have got now is a dark blue color, which is made just with blue and green. So instead of this, which is blue, green, and white, both of these are blue, green, and white, this is just blue and green, so it's darker. Now, I could wait until these stripes are all dry, and then it's not going to, the colors won't merge as much. They'll be crisper, which some people will like more. Another thing I could have done is I could have used one of these two colors and painted the background of this wave area, and then just gone in stripes over the top. Both of those are very valid options. But we're just going to dive right in here and start making our stripes. Now, one interesting thing about at least the paints that I'm using, and this is common in many paints, is that the white color is the strongest there is other than the black. And so if you add white to a paint, it will be a more opaque paint and it won't streak as much. You can see kind of where I have put my middle blue here. It's a very solid color. Here, it's streaking a lot because there's no white in this mixture and it's just plain a streakier paint. I really like working with lighter colors because of this. I like lighter colors in general, a nice pastel palette, but pastel palettes are going to be, ironically, stronger colors than darker palettes, unless you're using black in those palettes, which you are welcome to. I'm gonna cut in this corner, another swoosh over here. Now, if you want to, one fun thing to do is to blend these entirely and have basically very much more of a gradient of a wave instead of a striped wave. Here, I've done that a little bit accidentally in that kind of the leg of the wave there. So I've filled in all my dark blue stripes now. I'm also going to add a little bit of texture with the dark blue in the background here to give the kind of illusion that the waves keep going. Yeah, there we go. So I can lay this on pretty thickly because my paint is still wet back here. If your paint is dry back there, I would do it much more delicately because this dark blue will very easily overwhelm the lighter color beneath it. So we've got our stripes on. We could do these stripes a little bit more. In fact, a way to do it is to re-go over all of your original light stripes once again and see how that looks. But I'm going to stick right here. And what we are going to do now is do the white. So what I'm going to do is take some of this shade, my middle shade, and add some white to it. I've added my white color, and so I've made this kind of frosty blue tone, and this importantly needs to be lighter in color than this background because this is the sky, but now we're doing the foam, and the foam needs to be lighter than the sky. And so I'm going to just start cutting in here, and I'm just going for coverage right now. It's good to kind of loop in some of these colors if they're still wet for a couple reasons. Because if these dry, then there'll be ridges underneath your foam and it'll look a little bit funny. But also it's totally fine, and that can be a stylistic choice. And because if you have this blue looped in to the foam. It looks a little bit more realistic because that blue is underneath the foam. And so that foam should be a little bit darker. So yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna cover those blue guidance lines that I painted up top. And now we're going to blend that down. Now we're gonna do it again. We're gonna go right there. And so we want this to be a little bit thicker in the middle and thinner on the sides because it's fading out. There, like that. It's just on the crests of the waves. And this differentiates the waves a little bit more. And we can imagine that there are breakers somewhere in the distance. So we can get just a little bit back there. Yeah, that'll be great. Okay, so now that we've done that, we have two options. We can just dive right in to keep painting. That's what I'm going to be doing because we're filming this. And also, that's what I would do normally. But this is a good stopping spot if you want to let this dry. And then we can come back to it and do these finishing touching details later. I've got out my smaller brush for these finishing touching details. And this is a pure straight white. And I would normally hesitate to use just a white. My rule of thumb is if you want to use a white, ask yourself why. Because it will then be your lightest color by necessity. And if it's your lightest color, that means you can't go any lighter. But it will mold in to these blue areas because they're still wet. And so it will not be a pure white. So we're gonna just cut in and just lighten this up here. And I am also specifically going to lay this on pretty thickly to have ridges of white. There. To give more of a texture to the piece. Whites are kind of a tricky thing because you use so much white. What I do is I buy a much cheaper white than I do the rest of my paints because I use it so much. That being said, that then means when I use straight white, this, when it dries, is not going to be as good as it would be if it was higher quality paint, obviously. And it will be noticeable. It will be noticeably less shiny than everything else. That's something that I'm okay with, but if you're not okay with it, then you should invest in a good white. Now after this, I am gonna cheat and I'm going to make a whiter white. And how I'm going to do that is by mixing a teeny tiny bit of yellow into my white. Okay, I've got my yellow. It's honestly more of a green because my paintbrush still had some blue paint on it, but that's okay. And we're just gonna lay it just a little bit as a highlight. Now you can barely see this, and in fact, it's taking down some of this blue paint because the blue paint is still wet. But you just want just a little bit. And this also differentiates the Great Wave from all these other waves because we're not going to do this on the other waves. And we want to think about where the light is hitting the wave, which is at its top. So we're not going to do any in the lower part of the foam or even down here. Just right here. All right. And that is it. That is our quick and dirty Great Wave. If you learned something new, then please like and subscribe and have a beautiful day.